Hey everybody, Tedo Ichiban here. I know it's been a while since I've been back, but happy Halloween 2018. Man, I love comic books. I love Marvel, I love DC, and there's been a lot of stuff that's come out in the time that I've been on hiatus. A lot of Marvel Legends cover, a lot of movies, TV shows, etc., etc., etc. But you guys know I love Spider-Man most of all. And you know from the thumbnail alone what this is about. Spider-Man PS4. This game is probably one of the best superhero games of all time. It learned from the combat of Batman Arkham series, but it's given Spider-Man his own skills and his own twist, which actually the combat of Arkham Asylum I feel like makes more sense for Spider-Man because Batman is just a human. Well, he's got great fighting skill and etc. etc. To bounce off of people the way that he does, I feel like it's better suited for a game like this. And Greg Miller, a lot of other people have said pretty much the same thing. Um, so let's get into it. Speaking of Spider-Man PS4, I think that if you're a real fan, you've probably finished the game by now. Let's be honest. I know that the internet hates spoilers, but this game came out more than a month ago. Like we're practically at the 2 month point. Um, Even the DLC has come out already. So if you haven't beaten the game, if you don't know where I'm going with this, it's kind of your own fault. You shouldn't even be clicking a link that has a title like this if you haven't beaten the game. So that spoiler warning is for anyone who didn't know that. Moving on, Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 for PS4 hasn't even officially been announced yet, but we all know it's coming. Spider-Man, as you can see, uh, it made a lot of money. It won awards. It's getting all of the praise. They're doing it. It's happening. Um, but what are they going to talk about? I think that the sequel is going to focus on the identity of Spider-Man. Here's a few clues from the whole game, but they start at the beginning of the game and follow all the way through. You have Mary Jane exploring the Wilson Fisk property sale. She explains that she never liked heroes wearing masks. She explains that a real hero would stand behind their actions publicly. Um, she's talking to herself. She says this. She knows why Peter does what he does, but she just never appreciated the fact that he was hiding. It almost seemed cowardly to her. Peter explains to Dr. Octavius that he only kept his secret to protect his family. But as you know, by the end of the game, Uncle Ben, his parents, and Aunt May are dead. So there is no family anymore. There's no reason to protect the secret. The world doesn't know about Miles Morales or Mary Jane. So Peter being exposed wouldn't put them in danger necessarily. Um, I think that J. Jonah Jameson constantly makes reference to Spider-Man hiding behind a mask. He believes that an honest man would show his face. And this is a constant theme throughout the game. Throughout the podcast throughout the game. Um, at the end of the game, Doc Ock threatens Peter's secret identity. He pulls that whole, well, your secret will be safe with me kind of BS to trick Peter into helping him, or not arresting him, rather. And Peter shows his spider powers to Miles. He reveals that he's Spider-Man. And by the time of the DLC, Miles is already asking to be trained. So, in said DLC, Black Cat drives the entire narrative because of her knowledge of Peter Parker. She could have done anything. She could have tricked Spider-Man into getting the drive for any number of reasons. but she uses Peter as the driving force. His affections for not only her but innocent people, and his sense of duty in having a son, uh, which even indirectly puts Mary Jane in like a tough spot. And Black Cat mentions that Peter could be back with his ex, meaning that she knows about Mary Jane. See how this is all connecting? Uh, the only setup for any possible villain in the sequel is Harry. So Harry Osborn could either become the Green Goblin, Hobgoblin, or Venom. We don't really know much about Norman or what Norman will do. He may not transform into anything. He might just be a mayor, and that's it. But we do know that they're setting up Harry. I think that all of this is heading toward Spider-Man coming, his identity becoming public knowledge. And there's precedent for this in the comics. I mean, the Civil War, the entire year of comics after that in Spider-Man comics was about Peter's identity being public and the things that he would have to face. But this time there is no Aunt May to get shot. So what would happen? Also, it's possible that uh, Peter might have to go on trial. One of the things that J. Jonah Jameson mentions, I think Yuri even mentions it in the game, is that Spider-Man doesn't have to pay for his actions or collateral damage because there is no identity, no public identity that could take that blame. So, what does that mean for us? Well, if Peter's identity comes out, if Dr. Octopus shares it, and unlike Spider-Man Homecoming, Doc Ock has no reason to keep Peter's identity in jail. He'd immediately tell Kingpin or anyone else who asked. They won't know who Peter is because he's not famous, and so likely uh, there'll have to be a hunt for him. I think that will bring in Craven. I think they'll bring in Chameleon. I think that characters like that will be the main driving force of the next game. Uh, like how Martin Lee connected to Aunt May and therefore he was a major character in this game. Chameleon is an underrated original Spider-Man, like a classic villain. And, well, if Peter's identity is the issue, fighting someone who could be anyone poses Mary Jane, poses Miles, poses Peter to learn more about Peter. It seems like the story writes itself. But you guys tell me what you think. Who could be the next villain? Where could the story go? What will happen with Harry? There's a lot of things we don't know about where the story will go, but there's a lot of what we do know. Scorpion, Electro, Rhino, and Vulture are delegated to being hired muscle, basically. I think that sort of makes sense. They're so classic, but at the same time, there's other characters with deeper, more connected stories to Spider-Man. So if they bring them back for the next game in various capacities, that could be very, very cool. Um, but again, rather than have this going for like 30 minutes, I'm going to stick to the point. Peter Parker, his identity as Spider-Man, I think that's where Insomniac is going. I think that they'd set up character connections on purpose. I think that that's where it's going to go. It's going to be up to Yuri to try to help Peter to hide his identity. I think that Miles will have to dress up as Peter and save the city by himself in order to prove that Peter is not Spider-Man. Or because no one else knows about Miles. No one knows that there's quote-unquote two Spider-Man. And that might lead to Peter retiring. I think that's possibly why Insomniac chose to kill off Aunt May. I think that Peter's going to either die or quit being Spider-Man. Again, tell me what you guys think in the comments below. I'll see you. Peace.